Have you ever wondered what happens when you cross the line between ambition and vengeance? What if the person who holds the power to change your life is the one who's been silently orchestrating your downfall? Ava never asked those questions until she became the pawn in a billionaire's game of revenge. One moment, she was just doing her job, serving drinks and keeping the peace. The next, she was pulled into a whirlwind where loyalty was a weakness and betrayal was the price of survival. And when the truth finally came out, the consequences were far more devastating than anyone could have predicted. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more powerful tales like this one. Your support keeps the stories coming. The world of high society is one where even the smallest gesture can be fraught with layers of meaning, hidden motives, and unspoken rules. For Ava, a young black woman working as an air hostess for one of the most prestigious airlines in the world, life had always been about making ends meet, doing her job with a smile, and trying not to stand out too much. But on this particular flight, she would become the center of a whirlwind she couldn't have predicted. It started like any other flight. Ava was in her uniform, her hair perfectly styled, and her makeup light but just enough to command attention. She was assigned to serve the passengers in first class, a section of the plane that, despite its luxury, was often a dull and quiet affair. The people who sat there were rich, but their conversations rarely strayed from business or casual gossip. Ava knew her place, to remain professional, polite and distant, never too eager to interact. But then, as the plane cruised high above the clouds, she encountered him, the billionaire. Nathaniel Carter was a name that carried weight. He had made his fortune in tech, investing in companies that were on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and biotechnologies. His empire spanned continents, and his public persona was one of unapproachable perfection. At least that's how the media portrayed him. In reality, Ava knew the wealthy were never as polished as they appeared. She'd heard whispers about him among the crew. Some said he was charming, while others claimed he was ruthless. Some spoke of his broken marriage, others of the way he made cold, calculating decisions that often led to the downfall of his competitors. But today, on this flight, Nathaniel Carter was not the man of business news. He was just a passenger, albeit one who would change Ava's life forever. Excuse me, miss, can I have a moment of your time? His voice was smooth, commanding, but not unkind. Ava looked up from the drink tray she was holding and met his gaze. Of course, Mr. Carter. How can I assist you? She had learned long ago to keep her tone neutral, to be polite without being too eager. She didn't want to make him feel as though she was desperate for his attention. I've been watching you for a while, he said, his lips curling into an almost imperceptible smile. You have the grace of a dancer and the poise of someone who knows exactly where they belong. I want to offer you something. Ava's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to expect next, but this was definitely not the usual small talk from a first-class passenger. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. I have an event coming up, a high-profile gala with people from the world's most powerful circles. I'd like you to be my date. Ava blinked. This was absurd. She was just an air hostess. She'd been to a few fancy parties before, but never as the guest of honor, and certainly never someone as powerful as Nathaniel Carter. I don't understand, she said, her voice steady but unsure. Why me? Nathaniel's eyes gleamed. Because you're different. You don't fit the mold of the usual people I associate with. You stand out, and that, my dear, is exactly what I need. She couldn't hide her confusion. You need me to stand out at your gala? He chuckled softly, his eyes narrowing as if he was about to impart some grand secret. No, I need you to be there as my statement. A statement to the world. Ava still didn't quite understand what he meant, but the way he said it made her feel like there was something more at play, something beyond the words. Mr. Carter, I don't think—" "Please, Ava," he interrupted, his tone turning slightly more insistent. "This is more than just a simple favor. I'll ensure that your career takes a turn you never thought possible. You'll be known. You'll be someone." There was a pause. Ava could feel the weight of the moment, the pressure of his words, sinking in. Part of her felt a rush of excitement. This was an opportunity few people ever got, and it was hard not to be tempted by the promise of something bigger. But another part of her, a part that had always been cautious, sensed that there was something more to his offer than he was letting on. Still, she had worked hard to get where she was. Maybe this was the break she had been waiting for. She nodded, slowly, trying to mask the swirling uncertainty inside her. "All right, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice quieter now. "I'll go." Nathaniel's smile widened. "Good. I knew you would." As he turned to leave, Ava felt a strange sense of unease settle in the pit of her stomach. Something about this proposal didn't sit right with her. She didn't know why, but she had the distinct feeling that she had just stepped into a web of lies and deceit, a web where she was just another pawn. But what she didn't know was that Nathaniel's reasons for this offer went far beyond simple admiration for her poise, and soon Ava would find herself caught in a game where revenge, not romance, was the real motive. The day of the gala arrived far too quickly for Ava's liking. Her mind was still wrapped in a fog of uncertainty, but she had long ago learned to suppress doubts when opportunity knocked. Nathaniel Carter's offer, though strange and enigmatic, was too enticing to ignore. She had told herself over and over that this was just a professional engagement, a chance to be seen in the right circles, a chance to elevate her career. But as the evening approached, Ava's excitement began to wane, replaced by a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't just the way Nathaniel had made the proposal, his smooth words, his charisma, his odd insistence that she was different. No, it was something more insidious. A cold, lingering feeling that this wasn't just an invitation, it was a trap. Ava had spent the day preparing for the event. Her dress was a luxurious midnight blue, fitting perfectly to her slim frame. It shimmered in the light, the fabric hugging her body in all the right places. Her makeup was flawless, subtle yet striking, highlighting the deep brown of her eyes. Her hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face delicately. She was, by all standards, a picture of elegance, but despite the outward appearance of calm confidence, Ava couldn't shake the unease that settled deep in her gut. When the limo arrived at her apartment to pick her up, it felt as if time itself had slowed. The car glided through the streets of the city, the lights flashing by in a blur. But Ava's mind was a storm of thoughts. Why had Nathaniel chosen her? What exactly did he want from her? And what was the true purpose of this gala? The answer was elusive, hidden beneath the polished surface of his invitation. Nathaniel had told her the event was a gathering of powerful people, the kind of elite crowd that she'd only read about in magazines. But why would someone like him, a billionaire, with everything at his disposal, want to parade her around as his date? The limo pulled up to the venue, a sprawling, opulent mansion nestled atop a hill overlooking the city. The lights from the house illuminated the night sky, casting an otherworldly glow across the landscape. It was the kind of place that spoke of power and wealth, a place where secrets were buried beneath layers of extravagant luxury. Ava's heart raced as she stepped out of the car and onto the red carpet. The photographer's cameras flashed, and a sense of surrealism washed over her. For a brief moment she wondered if this was truly her reality. Nathaniel was waiting for her at the entrance, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of everyone in the room, but there was something about his smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was polite, almost rehearsed, but there was a coldness to it, a disconnect that she hadn't noticed before. "Welcome, Ava," he said smoothly, offering her his arm. "I'm glad you could join me." His voice was warm, but the tension in his body betrayed a different story. Ava took his arm reluctantly, but as they entered the grand hall together, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a carefully orchestrated performance, one in which she was nothing more than a prop. Inside the mansion was a masterpiece of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting a soft glow over the crowd of well-dressed men and women. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes, and the sound of classical music drifted from the corner. It was a scene straight out of a movie, a world far removed from the one Ava had known. But as they moved deeper into the crowd, Ava noticed something strange. People weren't just watching Nathaniel, they were watching her. Their eyes lingered a little too long, their smiles a little too cold. Whispers traveled through the crowd like a ripple in water, and Ava felt the weight of their stares. Suddenly, Nathaniel turned to her. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said, his voice carrying a hint of something more sinister. Before she could respond, he guided her through the crowd, stopping in front of a man who appeared to be in his mid-40s. He was tall, with sharp features and a calculating look in his eyes. His suit was impeccably tailored, and his presence radiated authority. "Ava, meet Gregory Wells," Nathaniel introduced him with a smooth smile. "He's an old friend of mine." Gregory's eyes scanned Ava with an unsettling intensity. "A pleasure to meet you, miss," he said, his voice deep and controlled. But there was something in his gaze, a glimmer of recognition, or perhaps something darker, that sent a chill through her. "Likewise," Ava replied, forcing a smile. Nathaniel watched the exchange closely, his eyes narrowing slightly, but it was Gregory who spoke again, his tone more inquisitive now. "So, Ava," he began, his words deliberate, "I hear you've been chosen as Nathaniel's date for the evening. Must be quite the honor, no?" Ava felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The way Gregory spoke, as if this was some sort of game, didn't sit well with her. She tried to maintain her composure, but she could sense that she was no longer just a guest at a gala. She was part of something much bigger, something she couldn't yet understand. Nathaniel, sensing the discomfort in the air, interjected, "Don't mind Gregory, Ava. He's just intrigued by the unconventional choice of my +1 tonight." Unconventional. Ava felt her cheeks flush with heat, and she could feel the weight of the word hanging in the air. Was this how Nathaniel saw her? As some sort of novelty? A statement to make? Before she could reply, the sound of glasses clinking filled the room. The evening was beginning in earnest, but Ava's mind was racing. She was here for a reason, she was sure of it, but the more she interacted with Nathaniel and his guests, the more she realized that this wasn't just about being seen with a billionaire. This was a carefully staged performance, and she was at the center of it. And somewhere hidden in the shadows of this glittering world, the true motive behind Nathaniel's invitation was waiting to be revealed. Ava felt herself sinking deeper into the sea of glittering conversation and unfamiliar faces. The music played on, soft and haunting, as the crowd in the ballroom danced and mingled. Nathaniel's presence, a constant at her side, felt more like a chain than an invitation. She was keenly aware that every eye in the room was on them, on her, but it wasn't just her nerves that unsettled her. It was the whispers, the way people seemed to talk behind her back, eyes darting between her and Nathaniel. They didn't look at her as one of them, no, she was a spectacle. She was the strange, exotic curiosity, a token. Nathaniel, ever the confident host, remained unbothered by the attention. But Ava couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her stomach, a feeling that the night's festivities were little more than a backdrop to something much darker. As the evening wore on, Ava found herself growing more and more isolated. The guests who initially greeted her with polite curiosity now ignored her presence altogether. It was as if her function had been fulfilled. She was just another accessory for the evening's image. At one point, she excused herself to the restroom, hoping for a moment of solitude. The grand mansion's hallways were quiet, the kind of silence that only came with wealth, opulent and unnervingly empty. As she passed a set of ornate doors, Ava overheard voices coming from within. She paused, a part of her drawn to the conversation. It was Nathaniel and Gregory. "I don't know why you've brought her here, Nate." Gregory's voice was sharp. "What's the point of this? You think parading her around is going to impress anyone?" Ava pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. She wasn't supposed to hear this, but there was something about their tone, their words, that made her stay. "I don't care what anyone thinks," Nathaniel replied, his voice colder than before. "This isn't for them, it's for me," Gregory laughed, a sound that made the hair on the back of Ava's neck stand up. "For you? What's she supposed to do for you, then? She's a beautiful woman, sure, but what's she really going to give you?" There was a long pause, then Nathaniel spoke again, his words slow, deliberate. "She doesn't know it yet, but she's about to play a much bigger role than just being a pretty face." Ava's heart raced as she realized that Nathaniel was not simply using her for status or novelty. There was something more, a plan she wasn't a part of, something darker than she could have ever imagined. The footsteps approaching snapped her out of her shock. She quickly turned and stepped into an empty room, just as Nathaniel and Gregory emerged from the hallway. They passed by her, unaware, and she listened to their voices fading down the corridor. Her pulse was pounding in her ears. She had to know more. Returning to the main room, Ava found Nathaniel waiting for her, his smile unreadable. She felt an unfamiliar chill as their eyes met. Her heart was still racing, the weight of what she had overheard sinking in. She couldn't let him see her fear, not yet, but she had to act quickly. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice steady, "I need to speak with you." He raised an eyebrow, his smile widening. "Of course, Ava. Let's find somewhere more private." His words sounded like an invitation, but to Ava they felt like a trap being set. They walked into a small study off the main ballroom. The walls were lined with dark wood and shelves of old books. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting an eerie light. Nathaniel gestured for Ava to sit, but she remained standing, her eyes never leaving his. "Why me, Nathaniel?" she demanded. Her voice was firm now, laced with the urgency she had kept hidden. "Why bring me here tonight?" He leaned back in his chair, a calculating glint in his eyes. "I'm surprised you haven't figured it out yet. But that's okay. You're not supposed to know everything at once." Ava's frustration bubbled to the surface. "You've been using me," she accused. "For what, some kind of game?" He chuckled, the sound rich with amusement. "Not just any game. It's about much more than that. This isn't about using you, Ava. It's about revenge." Ava froze. "Revenge?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel's eyes darkened. He stood, walking over to the window and looking out at the city below. "You see, Ava," he began, his voice low and cold, "there are people in this world who think they can get away with anything. People who play dirty, ruin lives, and get rewarded for it. My father was one of them." Ava didn't know what to say. She had expected some answer, some justification for his behavior, but this was not what she had imagined. Nathaniel turned back to face her. "I've spent years planning this, every move, every step, and you—" He paused, his gaze piercing. "You were the missing piece. I needed someone no one would suspect, someone who could slip through the cracks unnoticed." Ava's mind was spinning. "But what does that have to do with me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nathaniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My father wronged me, Ava. He destroyed everything I ever cared about. And tonight I'm going to make sure he pays for it. You're not just my date, you're the key to my revenge. You're going to help me take him down." Ava's world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought, she knew was unraveling. She was caught in a game of high stakes and even higher betrayal, and she hadn't even realized it. The billionaire's cold, calculated eyes watched her as the weight of his words sank in. The night, once a chance for glamour and escape, had turned into something much more dangerous. Nathaniel Carter's revenge had begun, and Ava was standing at the heart of it. Ava's mind was spinning as she tried to process everything Nathaniel had just revealed. Revenge, his father, the grand plan she was unknowingly a part of. It all seemed too much to grasp in one moment. She had thought she was simply stepping into a glamorous world, a world of power, prestige, and possibility. But now she realized that she had become entangled in a dangerous game, one where the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. Nathaniel watched her carefully, his eyes never leaving her face. He could see the shock in her expression, the confusion, but there was something else, something that hadn't been there before. Ava was strong, resilient, and he knew she wouldn't fold easily. That's why he needed her. She was the final piece to his intricate puzzle. "You're not just a pawn in my plan, Ava," he said, his voice softer now, though there was still a chilling edge to it. "You're more important than you realize. I need you to infiltrate his world. You're going to be my inside agent, the one who gets close to him. Gain his trust, learn his weaknesses, and then, when the time is right, you strike." Ava shook her head slowly, the weight of his words pressing down on her. "You want me to betray him, to play him like a fool?" Nathaniel's lips curled into a thin smile. "Not betrayal, Ava. This is justice. You have to understand, my father is not the man you think he is. He's ruthless, a monster who has destroyed countless lives, including mine. He deserves to pay for everything he's done." Ava could see the sincerity in his eyes, but there was also a darkness, a coldness that made her uneasy. Was she really just a pawn in his game of revenge? Or was there more to this than he was letting on? "I don't know if I can do this," Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I want to be a part of something like this." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "You don't have a choice, Ava. You agreed to this the moment you accepted my invitation. You think you're here because I admire you, because I wanted to make you a star? No. I chose you because you're the only one who can get close to him. And once you're in his world, once you've seen the things he's done, you'll understand why this is the only way." Ava felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had been so blinded by the allure of the evening, by the promise of something greater than herself, that she hadn't stopped to question Nathaniel's true intentions. She had assumed this was just another chapter in her life, a step forward. But now she saw the truth. She was being used, manipulated. "I don't want to be a part of this," she said, her voice stronger now, the resolve beginning to build. "I don't want to hurt anyone, especially not someone who doesn't deserve." Nathaniel's gaze softened for a moment, but there was no warmth in it. "I understand your hesitation. This isn't easy, Ava, but you have to understand. There's no going back now. The plan is already in motion. You're already involved. You're already a part of this." Ava took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She was trapped in a world she didn't belong to, playing a game she didn't understand. But there was no turning back. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. "I'll do it," she said, her voice tinged with reluctant resolve. "But I want to know everything. No more secrets, Nathaniel. I need to know the full extent of your plan." Nathaniel's eyes gleamed, with a mix of approval and something darker, something that made Ava's skin crawl. "Fine," he said, stepping closer. "But understand this, Ava. Once you're in, there's no escape. This isn't just about revenge. This is about power, control, and dismantling everything he's built. You're not just going to be his ally, you're going to be his undoing. And when it's all over, you'll have everything you've ever dreamed of: power, fame, control." Ava felt a chill settle in her chest. Was this really what she wanted? The promise of power, fame, and control? Or was this just another manipulation, another way for Nathaniel to get what he wanted? The guilt of the situation gnawed at her. She had never wanted to hurt anyone. She had always done her best to stay out of the webs of the powerful, to stay unnoticed, to do her job and go home. But now she had crossed a line. She had stepped into a world of deceit, manipulation, and revenge. As the night wore on, Ava's mind raced with thoughts of what was to come. The gala continued around her, but she felt detached from it all. Her role in Nathaniel's plan was just beginning, and she had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. But one thing was certain. She couldn't trust Nathaniel. Not completely. Not yet. There were too many pieces to this puzzle that she didn't understand. As the evening came to a close, Nathaniel escorted her back to the limo. His hand lingered on the small of her back, guiding her with a possessiveness that made her skin crawl. He was playing a game, and Ava was nothing more than a pawn in it. But there was one thing Nathaniel didn't know. Ava wasn't as naive as he thought. She had learned to play the game of manipulation long before she'd met him, and now she was going to play it her way. The night may have been over, but for Ava, the real game had only just begun. Ava's decision to expose Nathaniel's plans marked a turning point in her life. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Nathaniel, once a calm and calculating figure, became erratic. The walls of his empire, built on a foundation of secrets, manipulations, and revenge, began to crumble piece by piece. The message she sent to Nathaniel's father had set everything into motion. The old billionaire, enraged by his son's betrayal, wasted no time in publicly declaring war on Nathaniel. Within hours, the media caught wind of the scandal, and soon the world was buzzing with the story of a son who had tried to destroy his father's legacy. But it wasn't just the press that had turned against Nathaniel. His business partners, once loyal, now distanced themselves from him. The people who had once admired his vision now saw him for what he truly was, a man so consumed by revenge that he had lost sight of everything else. Nathaniel tried to salvage his empire, but the damage was done. His carefully orchestrated plan had been exposed, and with it, his true nature. People who had trusted him now turned their backs. The man who had once held all the cards found himself outplayed by someone he had underestimated. As for Ava, she remained at the center of the storm, watching as Nathaniel's world unraveled. But this time she was no longer a pawn in his game. She had become the one who turned the tide, the one who had shattered his carefully crafted illusion of control. She watched the fall of his empire with a strange sense of relief. Her conscience was clear, and for the first time in months she felt free. The weight of the past few weeks lifted, and she knew she had made the right choice. She had not just escaped his manipulations, she had exposed the truth, and in doing so she had freed herself from the shackles of the game Nathaniel had set for her. Ava's life was never going to be the same. She had walked into a world of privilege, power, and manipulation, but had found her strength in the face of deceit. The path she had chosen, one of moral clarity, had come at a great cost. The promises of fame, power, and control that Nathaniel had offered her had dissolved into nothingness. But in the process, Ava had gained something far more valuable: her integrity, her autonomy, and her sense of self. Nathaniel, on the other hand, had learned the hard way that vengeance was a double-edged sword. In his attempt to destroy his father, he had destroyed himself. His plan had backfired, and the public had turned on him. The empire he had so carefully built had crumbled, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of defeat. Ava's decision to expose Nathaniel's plans had not just saved his father's legacy, but also served as a wake-up call for those who had been caught in Nathaniel's web. It showed that no matter how powerful someone might be, no one is untouchable if the truth is uncovered. As for Ava, she walked away from the world of high society, from the billionaire's world, not in defeat, but in triumph. She had played a dangerous game, but in the end she had won. Not through manipulation, not through revenge, but through her own strength and courage. Ava had become more than just a part of someone else's game. She had become the architect of her own future, one built on truth, not power. And in the silence that followed the storm, she knew she had finally found her place in the world.